Thanks again for joining the walkthrough of our new vendor self-service product called VendorLaunch. I want to give you a quick history of what started us on this journey to create a vendor self-service portal. Over the past 20 years, we've worked with hundreds of customers in every imaginable industry, but mainly within healthcare and retail, public sector, food service, and manufacturing. So we took the lessons that we've learned there from our customers, and we talked to a lot of the customers in healthcare specifically, but in retail and public sector as well, to understand the majority of their vendor needs and vendor communication needs and ordering needs and invoice processing and check requests and that sort of thing within those industries. And we wanted to go after a very simplified solution. So we used a few customers to kind of create our initial product. Essentially today, we find that most of our customers fall into one of three buckets. So from how they communicate with their vendors. So either they have a manual process, so that's basically a paper process. A lot of you guys are familiar with that. So you have a phone or email conversation with a vendor. They send you maybe send them a PDF to fill out, and then they do that. They email it back to you, or however way, and then you use that to kind of pass around for approvals. You communicate back to them via email. If something is missing, they might have to send you a W-9. You're storing that document somewhere. So it's a very manual process. The other is an off-the-shelf application, something like a vendor-made or something like that, but it provides a certain level of self-service, but it's very client-centric rather than vendor-centric, and we'll get to that. And there's a level of complication that goes around with those products and setup and things like that we wanted to avoid. And then the third is some fashion of homegrown solution that you might have created, and it's usually an unfinished process, meaning it addresses certain parts of the need, but it doesn't do everything. Typically, we find that processes like that are missing the vendor communication piece, or they're missing a document management piece, or something like this. So what's wrong with your current process, okay, is, and I'm addressing those who I've talked to, essentially, and we've interviewed a lot of customers in this, and we found out what's really wrong is that manual process is highly inefficient. There's no effective way of communicating back and forth with the vendor other than just this kind of disjointed process of doing it. And lots of things get lost in that process. There's no policy enforcement in a process like that. So like when it comes to purchasing, there's, maverick buying, which I'm sure is a term you've heard before. And the typically, even off-the-shelf systems that you'll buy, and especially anything you're doing, and certainly a manual process, doesn't have an integration built within your business. So there's no way to get that data just out of the box into your ERP system. So a lot of your Lawson customers, a lot of your Infor CloudSuite customers, some of your SX customers, and there's other applications represented here as well. And integration takes time to build, and it's always probably the most complex part of the implementation process. And then the last thing is if you're using off-the-shelf applications, and there's a lot of competitors in this market, usually they're overcomplicated features that go unused, but you're paying for them, and they're really meant for a very sophisticated level of customer who's really interested in that granularity, where we find that most of our customers are just trying to get this job done rather than delve into those very granular processes. So what we set out to create was this self-evident procurement platform, and vendor management and vendor onboarding platform, which would eliminate paper, email, phone calls altogether, simplify the vendor onboarding process, and focus on essential functions. We wanted to enable the suppliers and the vendors to actually do the work themselves. And that's really what I mean when I say vendor-centric, is that is really what will set VendorLaunch apart from anything else that you're looking at. From a solution standpoint, is that we're focused around the vendor experience only because we want to encourage them to get the work done. And you'll see a slide on that and shortly. I don't have a lot of slides, by the way. We are going to dive right into this demo. And then we wanted to make sure that we support the need for transparency and auditability. So audit is a really big deal with a lot of our customers. They want to see everything that happens with the transaction from start to finish. And I think that from that standpoint, we've really nailed that requirement, and you'll see it, and I believe that you'll agree. We wanted to encourage an effortless level of communication. You'll see that within the application. It's available to you everywhere you go within the application. You can communicate back and forth with everybody involved. And then we wanted to integrate it seamlessly with your business. And by that, I mean integrate it with your ERP application. And it's out of the box integrated with every ERP application available. So what do I mean by vendor-centric? Vendor-centric to me is something that encourages vendor participation. A big problem with most of these applications that you see in the marketplace. Vendors just don't want to participate in them because it's a level of a barrier for them to get the work done, and it's very cumbersome. I know this because we deal with a lot of these applications to work with you as clients. We go through VendorMade, we go through GHX, we go through a lot of these different applications like I forget some of the names right now, but they're extremely cumbersome. Really long and drawn out process. There's no visibility into where things are at any given time. And it's really difficult to go back and forth and update things. And certainly there's no communication involved in any of it. So we wanted to enable our vendors to perform all the self-service tasks themselves. And by self-service, I also mean self-evident. So things like they wouldn't need training in doing them. And our goal was to really reduce external communication. So we wanted to make sure that the vendor really has never a reason to make a phone call or send an email. And if there is a reason to ever do that, we wanted to make sure we understand and we address it ahead of time. And then we wanted to make sure that we enhance the audit capability because vendors are interested in that as well as the client is. And then document compliance. That's like a really big deal with our customer base that we interviewed before we started on this process. And along the way, we've had a lot of customers that have helped us shape how this has gone. And one of their biggest complaints was, look, I don't know where to store my documents, and I don't know where to store the vendor documents. I don't know how to get the vendor to actually upload documents that we need. And a lot of that has become a big challenge for them. And a lot of them that had a homebrew process, they would just have folders on desktops or on servers or on shared drives where they were holding vendor documents, and it just turned out to be a real nightmare for them. So we wanted to address all of those. And that's what I mean by vendor-centric. So in the self-evident design, we wanted to make sure that we were responsive and mobile first. So our application works amazingly well on all devices. It works on every browser and especially well on Chrome, but on your PC or on your Mac, or if you're using a tablet or a phone, it should work exactly the same way. And it's a step-by-step process, so there's no way for you to get lost, and there's no training required in any of it. And then there's a purposeful collaboration by design. And by that, I mean, if you're talking about an invoice, on that invoice, there's a feature where you can collaborate. And if you're talking about a purchase order, on that purchase order, there's a feature where you can collaborate with all the people involved. So with the vendor, with the approver, with the person requesting, all of those people can collaborate right on that item. And it's just by design, we've created it so that collaboration becomes possible. And then digestible analytics, and that's one of the things that we noticed was lacking in these other applications. There were just these over complex analytic applications, but they were not very easy to understand. And of course, we wanted it to be safe, secure, and available everywhere, just like every other SaaS application is today. So this is a slide I was trying to get to. These are the applications that we're currently integrated with. So if you're using any of these, you can plug us right in, and within that 3-day implementation cycle, you're up and running. So we claim that we can do this implementation in 3 days if you have the data available, essentially. So and we can show you what data you need, and we can show you how to get it out. And then once you do, you're up and running in 3 days. So we're gonna show you how we onboard and approve a vendor very quickly. We're gonna have that vendor request a payment from us, and we're going to go through that approval process. We're going to create distributions for that invoice, and then and you'll hear me use the term invoice and payment request interchangeably. I'm trying to talk to a lot of different audiences here. I've got people on this webinar from a healthcare background, and their vendors are going to be physicians who are going to do what they usually would call a check request. You're going to see me trying to address a retail client base here, or a public sector client base. We've got all of those represented here on the call, and I want this demo to speak to all of you. It is very difficult to create a demo like that, but we base the demo such that it should fulfill all of your demo needs. But if you want a specific demo done just for your industry, I'm happy to put that together for you and do a demo for you using data that suits your needs more. So we're going to do a purchase of supplies from a store location. We're going to fulfill that order and provide feedback. We're going to communicate with the vendor all along the way and see the audit trail of everything that's happening. And then we're going to attach documents and images and things like that as we go, and we'll be able to kind of see how that works and how we can interact with it. And then we'll do a quick overview of our 3-day implementation cycle and answer any of the questions you might have. You should be seeing my screen now. And I'm going to go to our first page where I've actually filled out this vendor application because I wanted to save a little bit of time. But as you can see, it is a very simplified form for a vendor to apply with. It's a single page form. A lot of it gets auto-filled based on what you're going for, and you can enter a department or not. And obviously you're entering your information. So this is for a physician named Jillian Nadler. Our company here is called Demo Health. So I've kind of created a hospital demo here, but don't worry if you're in other sectors other than healthcare. I've made sure that this speaks to you as well. So don't focus too much on the fact that this is called Demo Health. We can look at other functionality that suits you. So you'll notice that Jillian has typed in her social security number here. This number gets validated. We do a TIN validation against the IRS record, essentially to verify that this TIN, this Social Security in this case, matches that name. We also do an address verification on Jillian using Google Maps API to make sure she's typed in a good, clean address for us. We do a phone number verification with Twilio, so she can get a text message and reply back that is the correct text message, or she can choose a phone call. We do an email verification. She can choose from a number of drop-down options for payment options and invoice and language options and things like that, based on what the client has set up in the background. We do this routing number verification, and she's chosen her bank account that she wants her funds paid to. And here we're going to go ahead and select her W-9. So she's going to attach that. And she's chosen a username and password for herself, and that in this case is just her email address. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that because I'll need it in just a minute. She's going to agree to our terms and conditions, which she can click and view. So once she submits this form, that vendor record is going to be created. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in as Jillian Nadler's account here, just so you can see what her world looks like. So she is now logged in. And she can see the first kind of welcome screen. So this is an account that just got created. This is the vendor record that has just gotten created. It hasn't been approved yet, and it hasn't really gone anywhere. So it says your account is not yet fully approved or processed. Now, in our world, approved means that somebody who's an approver that we can set up. And by the way, you can set that up by department, by location, however way you want. Somebody that is an approver has approved this, or multiple levels, if necessary, have approved it. And then processed means that it has then made its way to the Lawson system, for example, and has got a Lawson number, and then it would be processed. But she can still create a payment request. So this is why she came here. She came here to create a payment request for hours that she'd worked last week. So she doesn't have a contract or a PO number. So those are for different use cases. But she can say, like, hours for week ending, 5/31, and she can say what her due date is, like she wants to be paid by then, by the 21st, for example. And maybe she actually has the department number, like 5180, and she's going to go ahead and create her first line. So she can say, like, on Monday, I worked the night shift, and I charged $210 an hour, and I worked an 8-hour night shift. And then she maybe on Tuesday worked, the ER, and then she also charges $210 for that. And then the last thing is, she had parking, 2 days that she wants to be reimbursed for, and she can go ahead and do that. And then she can maybe attach her parking pass, parking receipt. So she's attached that. That's her total, and she can submit this, and she can kind of get a quick view of it before she submits to make sure she hasn't done anything incorrectly. She's going to go ahead and submit this. So it says invoice created, and she can see the status of it right away. So this is one of the beautiful things about VendorLaunch, is that you can see the status of everything you submit right away, and the status will always be real time. So this status of pending means that it's now in VendorLaunch, but no one's looked at it yet, and no one's approved it yet. It hasn't been coded yet, and it hasn't made its way to Lawson yet. So in this case, we'll talk about Lawson a lot, but you can interchange Lawson with whatever your ERP system is. So it could be CloudSuite Financials. It could be, if you're working with Workday or something like that, it's irrelevant. Just when you hear Lawson, just assume, whatever your application is. So once it's been approved, it'll make its way into Lawson. So I'm going to go ahead and log out for a minute here. And I'm going to log in as an admin. And I'm only logging as an admin just because my admin has all the functionality to do all the approvals and things like that. Typically, this would be the approver's account. So I just kind of want to make sure that you understand what I mean by that. Here's Jillian's record, and I could, I can use the search feature to always narrow down to anybody that I'm looking for. So if I was looking for the CBS Concrete, just any word on the screen, or the city, or the word processed, or the word ready, could be used to do the searches. And this is applicable throughout the entire application. If I look at Jillian's account, and I'm an approver, I can come in here and kind of review her record. I can make changes if I want to. I can't change certain things. I can't change her social security number. I can't change her banking information as a fraud prevention method. I can take a look at her W-9 here. And then there are things that are for approver only. So these are things that Jillian wouldn't have known. So she wouldn't know which vendor class she falls into and whatnot. So I'm just going to go ahead and select a couple of different things here. And if everything looks good, I can go ahead and accept it. Okay. I can save and approve. So now Jillian has been approved. But if you notice, if I look for Jillian here, it still shows that it hasn't been approved, only because we have 2 levels of approval necessary for this customer. Now you can get as many levels of approval as you want, but a lot of our customers do 2 levels of approval for new vendors. So I've set it to 2, but I've also set my admin account so he can do both levels of the approval. Just for the sake of this presentation, that's not a very realistic thing. But I want to point out something here. Look at the audit record at the bottom here, right? There is Jillian herself created the new user, and then Jillian submitted it, and then the admin approved it to a level 2 approval, and then saved it. So I'm going to go ahead and approve it again. And if I go back to that form, you'll notice that that audit is now already in there, and the times and everything you would ever want to know is now in our audit record, and it's just perfectly kept audit, and it's at the bottom of everything we do. So anything within VendorLaunch, be it an invoice, a purchase request, a new vendor, or anything, you just scroll to the very bottom and you'll notice that audit history of that item. It's kept out of your way for the most part, since you're doing work up here. But if you're interested, you can always scroll further down the page and see what that audit history was. And the last thing that's happened is always at the top. So we're going to go and look at her invoice. So we're going to look for an invoice approval here. So Jillian submitted this invoice over here. So I'm going to go ahead and look at that for approval. Now, my approval level is set at $5,000, but I'm going to go ahead and put my company and process level here. There's no PO on contract here. If everything looks good, and I'm just going to assume everything looks good for this guy, my approval level being at 5,000 approves this invoice completely. I can take a look at our parking receipt just to kind of make sure, and that downloads essentially right into my folder wherever I download things, and I can view it. I can go ahead and approve this, and then the audit, as you can see, is at the bottom here again. And one last thing is I can make a note to Jillian. I can say, next time, please, attach a PDF of your timesheet, of your approved timesheet, or something like that. I'm just making a quick note here. So that is there. It says, and that's there for you to kind of see what happens in the next step. If I go back to here, I'm going to create a distribution for this invoice. So this is a different role now, looking to do that distribution. I can see again I can see the comment the admin made, and I'm still logged in as admin. Again, that's just for the purposes of this demo. You can see the audit trail, and then up here I can see what's going on. And what I want to do is I want to start adding a distribution. So if I go, I can say, let's say this was the parking. So I'm actually going to do the $32 here. And then when I add the next line, you'll notice that it automatically calculates what's left, so I can code that accordingly. So now that's fully coded. I don't need to make any other adjustments here. I can just submit, and it says we've saved your changes here. And I can log out and log back in as the vendor. So look at that. It shows that my invoice has been approved. But since my vendor has been approved, I need to essentially make sure that it gets into Lawson. And so now that vendor has been approved, we should be able to see it getting approved in Lawson just momentarily. So I've got this set up on like a 5-minute cycle, and we're just about near that 5-minute cycle now. So it should be done the next time we get in here, essentially. I can go ahead and view that invoice, and I'll see that message from the admin, and I'll say, okay, thank you. I see that it's been approved, so I don't have to worry about it for this time, essentially. So you see all that communications happened here within VendorLaunch, and I don't have to call to ask for the status of my invoice. And what's nice is now, oh, look, so the message went away, meaning that the Jillian's now actually got a Lawson vendor number. So we'll be able to see that. We'll be able to search by it. We'll be able to see it. That Lawson vendor is now created within Lawson, and that invoice has now made its way to Lawson, ready for payment because it's already approved. So once that invoice gets paid, Lawson, with it, we have an IPA process that we've already created. You just plug it in essentially, and it'll pick up that paid invoice status, and it will come back here and add the additional payment information into VendorLaunch, and it will change the status to paid. So there's no reason why this vendor should ever have to come back to us to, ask any questions outside of what they can find within VendorLaunch. I want to move to a different use case. Okay, so I'm going to log in back as admin real quick. Now, normally I would be doing this as a buyer role, so that we have a lot of different roles. And by the way, this is like the admin setup screen, so all your different codes and terms and things like that will be set up here. And these are things that we took right out of the Lawson setup, essentially. And the client decided that they were going to remove certain distribution codes and hold codes, tax codes, and things like that didn't apply to VendorLaunch. But this whole process took us about 10 minutes. So we've got the scripts that pull that stuff out of Lawson, out of CloudSuite, out of Workday, out of all of those different applications, and they can populate it, which is why we can speed up that implementation time to just 3 days. So I've got my users, I've got how those users are applied, and by what department they can do approvals on coding, on invoices, on purchases, on vendors, and things like that. And any sort of kind of rejection messages and things like that. But we can, those are details you're probably not interested in. So I'm going to go ahead into something that's a little bit more fun, which is buying. Okay, so in this case, I'm a buyer at a store. Okay, so this could apply to a hospital, this could apply to a retail location. Let's just say you've got a retail location with 500 stores, and you want to enable your store managers to do some purchasing. So if I want to buy from a local vendor like Cal's Hardware, I know my company and I know my location. Is store 50. Maybe I have a department, maybe I don't. I'm not going to enter the department here just to simplify the approval process, because otherwise it will get routed to somebody in that department to approve. And then I want to say what day I want all this stuff delivered by. Maybe I want it by next week. And I'm going to go ahead and start my order. So I've got my item number out of the catalog for Cal. And then I know what the description of that is. I want 8 of the, let's say, actually, these are my batteries. Maybe I just need 4 of these. And then I'm going to go ahead and add that. And then I want to buy some LED light bulbs for the store. And I've chosen these Westinghouse brand units, and I want 8 of those, and those are $19.99 each. And then last but not least, I need a coax cable for the media cabinet in the store. So I'm just going to quickly add that here. And that's only $8.99. That's it. If I had if I had some sort of file to attach, I could do that here. But otherwise, I'm kind of set. I'm ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and submit this purchase request, and it gives me a little overview of it. $224 total. that should be well within my manager's approval, the way I've got things set up here. So that's been successfully created. By the way, what I'm not showing you is anytime there is a need to notify somebody, I'm generating an email to that person so that they know there is something for them to do. So there's an email, there's a PO to approve, there is a purchase. If you're a vendor, if there's a new purchase order for you, purchase request is what we really call them, because we're not looking to fulfill everything what a PO functionality would necessarily be just doing what we call a purchase request. So once that's there, I'm going to log in as the person who's the approver. Again, I'm the vendor and the admin here, so I'm kind of giving myself all of those rights. So I'm going to go ahead and approve these purchase requests for CALs, and so that's the one right there. And again, this is well within my approval. Dollar amount is $222. I'm just going to look at it, and I'm going to say maybe say next time just go to Home Depot or something like that, just so you can kind of see what that comment looks like later. But I'm going to go ahead and approve it because I know that person needs it today. Okay, so now that I've successfully approved that purchase request, I'm gonna log in as Cal from Cal's Hardware. So let's see if I've got that guy here. And I've saved all these passwords just to kind of make this go quickly. So this is Cal, and he just got this purchase request that we just created. So if I go ahead and view that, oops. So he's going to come in here and he's going to start fulfilling. He's first going to look at this, and we could hide. There's an option to hide internal messages, but I've kind of made it so that this person can see everything right now. This full transparency doesn't always work for you. So Cal's like, okay, well, yeah, I've got 4 of these. Let me give you that. I only got 6 of these, and then I can give you that one there. And I can tell you, if you like, I have 2 more LEDs that are like a different brand, and I can kind of basically say, that I'll go ahead and add those if you like. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that. And then I've basically told her that I can substitute the 2 that were missing, essentially with the units that we have. I forget if I updated this or not, but we can update it again. Okay, so as you can see, Cal has updated the request, and I just got an email. As the buyer, I just got an email that says that the order has been partially fulfilled. So if I go out, make sure there's nothing to do here. I'm going to log back in as the buyer, who was my admin. And then let's look at the purchase requests for Cal's. So I noticed that he's only done 6 of the 8 here, and I can say, yes, that's fine. So hopefully he'll go back in and do the remainder of that. So that's really kind of the most of the functionality that I wanted to go through with you. But I did want to show you how we communicate back and forth with everybody. So these are technically 3 different people. I've only got them as 2 here because I used the same user to do the approval as I did with to do the purchasing. But that certainly wouldn't be your use case. Just did it to save time here. And then you can see all of the different steps that were taken from the creation to the approval to the fulfillment are essentially included in our audit log. Okay, so we onboarded a vendor and we approved them. We requested payments by the vendor and approval. We created those distributions as you saw. We purchased from a store location. We purchased from Cal's. We had Cal fulfill those orders. We communicated back and forth, and we saw all those audit trails, and we saw what document management could do for us in the way of attaching the W-9, in the way of attaching that parking receipt, in the way of attaching the image of the light bulb that we didn't have in stock, the replacement for it, and that sort of thing. And then we kind of saw very quickly what it would take to do the implementation. Again, we have all of the connectors built already for your different ERP applications, and it's very easy for us to extract the data you need to get into VendorLaunch. And it's basically the gist of the application. We've tried to keep it extremely simple and useful. So we got that one-click vendor onboarding, have the streamlined approval process, effortless invoice and payment requests, flexible and straightforward purchase requests, seamless document management, and a very uncomplicated audit and validation process. A little bit more about that validation process, actually, that I want to talk to you about. So I will go to this slide right here. So we do an IRS TIN validation. The phone, email address, and address verification is fine. The OIG exclusion list, so this is the Office of Inspector General's office. We look at the exclusion list for your vendors, all your vendors. The UN trained sanctions list, we make sure that they're not on that sanctions list. And again, we're out of the box integrated with your ERP application. From a pricing perspective, let's first look at the implementation cost. So there's a three-day implementation cost that comes at a fixed cost, and that includes connecting it to your ERP application with our basic connectors. And then any additional technical resources you need are available by request. So if you tell me that you want to go outside of that model for doing your integration to the ERP because you want some other custom things done, we have the resources to do that for you at an additional cost. And then the subscription is essentially you can look at it as a monthly billing, essentially per cost per vendor per month, a cost per user per month, and a cost per premium transaction. That premium transaction, so those are things like the validations that we talked about. So when we're doing a TIN validation with IRS, that actually costs us money, and we essentially charge you a fraction of $1 for each one of those costs. If you're doing a phone number verification, same type of thing. So those are premium features that a lot of our customers don't feel like they need, but the ones that need it essentially pay for what they use. So if you're only using 25 premium transactions in a month, you only get charged obviously a lot less than $25 for that. And the costs we haven't determined yet because we're still in a beta process. We're keeping the application in beta with some of our customers until near the end of this year. And our beta program includes everything you saw on the screen. And then the incentives to be a beta customer. So this is that'll give you the opportunity to drive the requirements for this application. So there's things that you notice that were missing based on your requirements today. Those are things that we can provide you with as a beta customer. If they satisfy anybody else's requirements, we're definitely willing to look at that. You don't pay anything through the beta period, so and you get full support through that period, and you get no implementation costs. We are generally available. And then from that point on, since you were a beta customer and since you were helping us build the application, you get 50% of the cost of the GA release for life. So that is a pretty good incentive, I think, for being a beta customer. And you can request a demo or more additional questions that you might have if you want a personal type of demo set up for you. Feel free to contact me. It's just tan@nogalis.com. I'll follow up with an email, including the deck to everybody who attended today.